Every once in a while, when covering American politics, you notice somebody or something that is atypical, something that's unusual. A candidate who is not just a good person at the right time, who wins a great victory, and then holds a seat for a long time. You notice a superstar. And Kari Lake, who right now is currently running in Arizona, is that superstar. I have watched some of the clips related to the story that we're talking about today, and I completely understand why Katie Hobbs, who is her opponent, who is basically a cat lady for the Democratic Party, is afraid to debate her. I understand why Kari Lake has gained so much ground in the state of Arizona, which basically, after John McCain died, seemed like it was going blue for good. And it's because this woman knows how to handle her stuff, and her coattails might be long enough for her to drag Blake Masters along with her to a Senate victory. Now, with that in the backdrop, with you guys being aware of what I'm talking about Kari Lake being a superstar, today we're going to talk about an absolutely potentially devastating story that just was not for Kari Lake's campaign, because recently there was a break-in at Katie Hobbs' campaign headquarters, and this was immediately rushed to judgment blamed on Kari Lake and her ratcheting up the anti-Katie Hobbs rhetoric. Now, we're going to go over this, we're going to slice it up, bring it down, serve it to you guys, but before we get into that, I'm sponsored, so let me chuck it to the sponsor, and then I'll bring it over here, and we'll discuss all of this on the other side. A shocking report shows us that burglaries are up 35%, and considering burglary has one of the lowest clearance rates of any crime, that's not good. That means people are breaking into your homes more, and they're not getting caught, and considering they do on average in terms of damage and theft, $2,800 worth of harm each and every time, it's important that you help yourself gather the evidence necessary in order to prosecute these criminals. This is one of the reasons why I'm partnering with CameraBulb.com, because this little stealthy camera can help bring justice in case the worst case scenario follows you. You plug this right into your light bulb slot, works on Wi-Fi so you can monitor it from anywhere, and there's an SD card slot, meaning you can store hours and hours of high quality footage used to turn into evidence in order to protect yourself in case the worst case scenario falls upon you. Now, if you're interested in the camera bulb, you can go to camerabulb.com, get yourself 65% off, 30-day free trial. Trust me, you won't regret it. So Kari Lake is doing absolutely great. She's been gaining grounds on Katie Hobbs in the polls for the race for Arizona governor for a while now, and if you believe one of the most recent latest polls, she's essentially blowing the doors off of this woman, being up 11 points, 4-point margin of error, so her lead would be outside the margin of error, and she looks great going into this gubernatorial race, which is only a week or so away. Obviously, the only thing that could go wrong, the only thing that could ruin this, is some kind of late October surprise that could torch her campaign. Now, by the way, I am not unaware of the fact that there's a red wave going on, that a lot of the ground that Republicans like Senate candidate Dr. Oz have gained recently is due in large part to that red wave. But it is very important for us to identify candidates that are riding ahead of the wave versus behind the wave, and Kari Lake is definitely one of those candidates. If you look at the Blake Masters Senate race, he's just not doing as well as her in the polls, and likely he's going to have to depend on her at the top of the ticket to bring this thing home. The same thing that we're seeing in New York. Lee Zeldin is punching above his weight in the gubernatorial race. By the way, legend of Zeldin, if you're in New York, please, for the love of God, go out and vote for him. But he's also leading in key swing districts, which will likely mean that down ballot, we're going to see some Republican victories due to the fact that he's running a stellar campaign and his opponent is running a campaign directly into the ground. So Kari Lake ahead of the red wave. I understand that she's getting a bump because it's a Republican year, but she's running well ahead of that. Well, Katie Hobbs recently dropped a story about somebody breaking into her campaign headquarters, and she released a photo of this person, and immediately the narrative was set out there, and it was set out there by Katie Hobbs, that this was somehow the fault of Kari Lake, who was leading her in the polls. Now, how you respond to situations like this really determines what level of candidate that you actually are. are. Normally, what you would do is have people say, this is wrong, this is not good, I don't support this, but Kari Lake respects her voters a lot more than the average politician, so she skipped all of those steps and pointed out that this is clearly a last-minute Hail Mary from Katie Hobbs, the media's anointed candidate, who is just terrified to debate her, and the idea that you would imply that anybody in her campaign was somehow responsible for this break-in is absurd, and she started demanding that the media ask questions to Katie Hobbs about what went on during this break-in. Was anything stolen, etc., etc. I will play you some of this tape because it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so Katie Hobbs' campaign headquarters was broken into earlier this week, and her campaign manager said in a statement she argued that the incident was a direct result of a concerted campaign of lies and intimidation by you and your allies. Do you have a response to that?
That is absolutely absurd. And are you guys buying that? And I can't believe that she would blame my amazing people or blame me for something like that. I don't even know where her campaign office is. I'm assuming it's in a basement somewhere, because that's where she's been campaigning. And you guys are despicable for falling into that trap. You drag the American people through so many BS stories like the Jussie Smollett. You know that she's running a bad campaign. She's being attacked by her own party, and she's desperate.
I know you talked about it, but again, are you surprised this happened? But also, do you kind of, I don't want to say condone because they're still investigating, but just your reaction to that whole situation?
My reaction is I'm really... I'm saddened that Hobbs and her camp would try to pin this on us. They said that Fetterman in Pennsylvania had the courage to debate, but she doesn't.
Why would she?
And the fact that you guys are running with this story, shame on you.
Now look, Kari Lake is a TV personality, so we're going to understand that in some ways she's just going to be better than the average candidate in responding to certain things, in her delivery of her talking points and all of that, but she's also quite clever on her feet, and she also has great political instincts, because while there are situations where something bad happens to your political opponent that you want to come out as empathetic, she ended up looking into Katie Hobbs' statements, what was implied by those statements, outright stated by those statements, and decided to go with a different tact, which was to basically distance herself from this burglar, which, by the way, they all do. But in the way that she did that was she declared that Katie Hobbs was lying about what happened in this situation while mocking her campaign headquarters, because her campaign is basically running away from Kari Lake. They're cowardly. They refuse to debate, and she goes with the basement jab, all of that fun stuff, which, by the way, is a big gamble if this would turn out to be one of her supporters or somebody with memorabilia from her campaign. But guess what? That gamble, those instincts ended up paying off, because this was not a Kari Lake supporter. This was not somebody trying to get back at Katie Hobbs, trying to do something as some kind of reaction to the rhetoric coming from Kari Lake. This was a transient who breaks into places, and his motivation was clearly to steal stuff. Police arrested 36-year-old Daniel Mota dos Reis, who actually has a history of breaking and entering places. And what was not pushed forward by Katie Hobbs in the initial reporting, and since there was a lack of follow-up questions, this went out there completely unchallenged. What was actually taken from this place was not secret campaign documents or key information on the failing campaign that is Katie Hobbs. It was actually an Apple computer mouse, an Apple keyboard, and a black Nikon camera. Now look, before the guy was caught, Katie Hobbs didn't know that this was somebody who was a serial burglar, somebody who was arrested for burglary earlier the same day at a commercial building stealing other stuff. But what she did know was that this person had stolen an Apple mouse, an Apple keyboard, and a Nikon camera. She did know that this was clearly not including any vandalism that had anything associated with Kari Lake. And one of the reasons why you knew for a fact that this woman knew that this was a fake story, a fake narrative that she was running with, is that when she was pressed on this issue that she put out into the public and wanted the media to do the work on, specifically on what may or may not have been stolen, she dodged the questions. Let's go to the clip.
Hi. What was taken from your campaign office? And do you have reason to believe that this was politically motivated?
I'm not talking about
It's kind of a big deal, though, that your campaign office was broken into.
I think access to safe and legal abortion is kind of a big deal, and that's what we're here to talk about.
Do you have reason to believe it was politically motivated?
We're not going to go beyond the statement.
Again, credit where credit is due to Kari Lake for spotting this and then reacting in the way that she did, when obviously being wrong about the nature of the break-in could have really hurt Kari Lake. Now, after we have the full scope of this, which, by the way, thank you to the police in Arizona for actually releasing the full scope of this, you realize that this was clearly not an intimidation tactic coming from Kari Lake or some kind of Watergate-like scandal where they attempted to steal key campaign secrets from the falling like a rock Katie Hobbs campaign. And it makes the statements from Katie Hobbs' campaign manager all the more hilarious. So now I'm going to read you them, knowing for a fact right now that they likely knew this was a standard break-in by a career burglar, because that's what career burglars do. That had nothing to do with this being a political issue. So Nicole DeMont, who manages Hobbs' gubernatorial campaign, told CNN, nice to always pick your sources, that, quote, Secretary Hobbs and her staff have faced hundreds of death threats of violence over the course of the campaign. Throughout this race, we have been clear that the safety of our staff and of the secretary are number one priority. Let's be clear. For nearly 2 years, Kari Lake and her allies have been spreading dangerous misinformation and inciting threats against anyone they see fit, DeMont continued. The threats against Arizonans, I didn't know they were Arizonans, but I guess that makes sense, attempting to exercise their constitutional rights, and their attacks on elected officials are the direct result of a concerted campaign of lies and intimidation. Mont said that intimidation won't work, and expressed thanks to Phoenix Police Department for keeping Hobbs and her team safe. Now, obviously, this statement is totally ridiculous. Obviously, this is Katie Hobbs looking out into the world, realizing that she's 11 points down in the polls, having a break-in occur, and her basically trying to wish something into existence that wasn't there on the hopes that maybe it will save her failing campaign. But again, Katie Hobbs has been cowardly throughout the whole course of this race. She's been trying to win based on media backing because she's the media-anointed candidate, and refusing to debate Kari Lake out of fear. And voters can detect that fear. Voters notice this. So in a red wave year, you can't rest on your laurels. You can't avoid debate. You have to go out and confront the issues, and she's just unprepared for everything Kari Lake is bringing to the table. So the fact that Kari Lake was able to spot this, identify this, notice the weirdness and inconsistencies in Katie Hobbs' behavior, and now only a few days after this story broke, it's completely blown up in Katie Hobbs' face, shows you all you need to know about how terrible of a campaign we're seeing from Katie Hobbs and how much of a star Kari Lake is.
I have a story for you. We had an incident this morning at our campaign headquarters. Now, I didn't go crazy and I didn't throw a bunch of statements out, but we had an incident where somebody was seen rummaging in our campaign office. And I have evidence to believe it may have been Katie Hobbs herself who was involved in this. And so I want you to take the same vigor you put into the story, the lies that were spread yesterday, and I want to make sure you guys, I saw last night, Fox 10 News, my old employer, wow, they actually did more to protect the criminal in this case. They blurred his face. They protected Katie Hobbs because they're carrying her water. And they defamed me. They put defamatory statements, lies about me. And the reason they did that is because this was the real news yesterday that none of you wanted to cover. We're 11 points up. You're in a frenzied panic because your chosen candidate is not winning. You didn't want to cover this, so you had to run with a completely garbage bullshit story. Shame on each and every one of you. Shame on you. We had an incident this morning at about 6:45 a.m. We have video, we have actually a photographic evidence of somebody rummaging through our campaign headquarters, and I believe it was Katie Hobbs, and I would like to show you that photographic evidence. I hope you'll cover this with the same vigor that you covered everything else. Now, we're laughing. I know this is a joke, obviously, in case you didn't figure it out. But what I'm trying to tell you is it's a joke what you guys are doing in the news. And the world should know that you guys are not serious journalists when you cover this garbage. Shame on you for trying to change the election results. I know, Joe, that your eyes hurt over there and you're too cool for school. Joe Dana doesn't even want to pay attention over here with 12 News, one of the worst instigators of fake news in town. This is the kind of garbage you guys spread. When I get to the questions, I will, Joe. But let me tell you, this was the real news yesterday, guys. 11 points up. Not a darn one of you covered it. I'm sure Fox 10, when they got the results of their poll, were shocked. They barely covered it as well. And it's really disappointing.
Now, for those of you who are listening on Apple's podcasting platform or over on Spotify, first of all, thank you. But you're missing out. So I will describe to you what Kari Lake just did for you blind viewers out there who can't see it. She just said that there was a break-in at her campaign headquarters this morning around 6 a.m. Then she held up an image of the suspect, and that image was her opponent, Katie Hobbs, in a chicken costume, which A, mocks the break-in story, which was proven to be a joke, and B, also points out that this woman is still dodging a debate with Kari Lake because she's a coward. By the way, she's also taken shots at Katie Hobbs, saying that John Fetterman's a better debater than her because John Fetterman actually showed up on the stage. This is an utter destruction of a candidate that was anointed as a guardian of the democracy by the left-wing media, and I'm all here for it, and it's gonna ride that wave to the governorship. Out of all the TV personality candidates, this woman is handling her business better than any one of them. And yes, that includes Donald Trump, who would often get into petty, pointless fights with people that don't matter, because Kari Lake seems to be more precise and concise in her attacks. And if you were to compare her to somebody like Dr. Oz, who honestly should have been beating Fetterman based on the issues and essentially is riding the Fetterman stroke and the red wave and the belief that Fetterman can't even function and the fear that his wife might be puppeteering him, that really shows you all you need to know about identifying properly which one of these candidates are winners, which one of them are stars, and which one of them can actually deliver and use their celebrity in order to succeed rather than it being a detriment. Kari Lake, absolute superstar. She's probably going to make a fantastic governor, and honestly, she's running for her first term as governor in Arizona. Maybe she decides to wait out for her second term and then do a DeSantis, which DeSantis is likely going to announce that he's going to run in 2024. He'd be an idiot not to. And unlike Ron DeSantis, she won't have the cloud of Donald Trump looming over her shoulder when she decides to step up into the presidential realm. So congratulations to Kari Lake. You absolutely identified this, called this, reacted in a stellar way, and you nailed it, and you're about to win the governorship based on the fact that you're a great candidate running against a terrible candidate, but you're also running a fantastic campaign. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think about Kari Lake, her campaign, this whole situation down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about how Kari Lake is a star. Till next time.